Well, good afternoon and welcome to MedTech Crossroads. I'm Parunak. Today is episode 50, Friday, March 19th of 2021. We're going to pop the title slide back up here for everybody to see. If we can make that happen. Oh boy, it's always technical problems. There we go. Today, we have COVID news. You remember last week we had Dr. Ing Pottinger on the show. What a great time with her. Back to the COVID news this week with some good news and some bad news. After that, Mary Auge and Sebastian Alvim with XLerateHealth. After that, if you're still thinking about an emergency use authorization, we want to talk to you and get you up to date on how those are working out and where those are going next. After that, it's our third and final pitch party contestant of March. And after that, quick Q&A, and it'll be end of the show for today. But next up, COVID metrics. I wish I could tell you that these were coming from covidtracking.com, but they have shut down as of March 7th over to CDC for most of the data. But today, some good news and some bad news. Here's the good news first. The American Red Cross has noted that 1 in 5 blood donations from unvaccinated people actually have COVID antibodies in them. Well, that's pretty cool. That means that things might be spread in terms of immunity a little further than we had thought or hoped, and that would be really great news. Okay, time for the bad news. This from The Atlantic, one of our favorite sources for COVID news since they had put up the COVID tracking project. The clearest sign that the pandemic could get worse, and this from our own state of Michigan, that the curves are beginning to rise again. Not just cases, but hospitalizations and hospital admissions showing an uptick. Not soon enough for deaths to come back up. So we're gonna have to see what happens here. Here's a closer shot of those, but you can see that the cases, even though the testing did not rise, the cases have shown a dramatic up spike, hospitalizations and hospital admissions also showing an up spike. So we'll just have to see where this goes. Not yet a nationwide trend, but certainly a trend in Michigan. Let's check in on vaccine distribution since we didn't do it last week. That number at the top of the page has gone up dramatically since 2 weeks ago. We're now at 21 to 25% that have been given a first shot. And of course, I think most of us know somebody who's gotten one or both shots, if not we ourselves. And those vaccinations continue to climb pretty much a straight line. We're now at 2.5 million average doses per day. So generally some good news out of the vaccination process, but interesting to see what's going to happen this spring. We were hoping that the curve would stay down as it had dropped with little explanation. And now in places like Michigan, seems to be coming back up. So we're going to have to wait and see. Well, that's what we can tell you today about COVID. And what I want to do next, if we can get things to work here, I want to welcome my guests today, Mary Auge and Sebastian Alvim with XLerateHealth to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, Mary. Hey, Sebastian. I apologize. We just seem to be having technical difficulties up the wazoo today. I'm going to make sure this video works. Hey, look, it's back. Almost. We're just messing it up entirely. Mary Auge and Sebastian Alvim with XLerateHealth. Mary, I'd like you to start for us. You're in the wonderful city of Flint, Michigan, and that's not a place that we often think about as a high-tech and med-tech hub. But frankly, I could have said the same thing about Detroit 20 years ago, and what we've seen is all sorts of amazing things coming out of that city. I'd love for you to start by telling us just a little bit about yourself, the roles you play, and what we're seeing in the city of Flint.
Sure. So my name's Mary Auge. Thank you for having us on today. Really excited to talk about entrepreneurship and the ecosystem that's been evolving over the past 5 years or so here in Flint. My background is I have 20 years of experience in commercializing healthcare technology. Most of that experience comes from Boston, where I worked for Massachusetts General Hospital and Brigham and Women's Hospital out in, who are the affiliate or teaching hospitals for Harvard Medical School. I decided to come back to Michigan about 8 years ago and just started to look at what's happening in the Flint area towards entrepreneurship. So what has really been exciting is first I worked with Ascension Genesis, which is a 400-bed health system, and they really wanted to work with partners in this region to create kind of a healthcare entrepreneurial ecosystem. And it's been fantastic working with like University of Michigan Flint. And then I'm not sure if anybody knows Phil Hagerman, but think of him as the Flint Dan Gilbert. So he is a very successful entrepreneur. He founded and really developed Diplomat Pharmacy and did an IPO. And he bought a couple of buildings in downtown Flint, all for entrepreneurship. So the first building was the Dryden building, and that got filled up and there was some co-working space. And then he bought another building called the Ferris wheel building. And in the Ferris wheel building is 7 floors, and it's all for startup companies. And that got filled up within the first year for startups. So it just goes to show that there is a lot of entrepreneurship activity happening here in Flint. And it's really exciting because in this community, we had talked about, okay, if you wanted to create a startup or you're interested in entrepreneurship, where do I go? It was always confusing. And so they created 100K Ideas. So 100K Ideas is on the first floor of the Ferris wheel building. So all you have to do is walk in the building and there's someone right there to help you. You just explain who your idea is, what you're thinking, and they'll provide you with 20 hours of free service to kind of validate your idea.
Wow.
And then also they hired in some students from the universities here. So also what's been exciting, at least on the healthcare front in Flint too, on technology aspects and entrepreneurship, is the Mott Foundation had commissioned a study probably about 6 or 7 years ago that shows between our health systems and our universities, we have the foundation for healthcare here and for startups. So for those of you who don't know, we have 3 universities here. So Mott College, University of Michigan, Flint, and Kettering. And then we have 3 health systems. So Ascension Genesis, McLaren Hospital, and then Hurley Medical Center. So we've really, over the last few years, built a relationship with all of them and tried to create, again, some of this entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so it's been really exciting over the last 5 years of what's been happening here.
That's really incredible. And so in some ways, it sounds like the thing that's happening has analogies to things that we've seen in cities like Detroit, in part supported by a philanthropic endeavor that just says, we've got to have this, and I'm gonna put it here. Is that roughly correct?
And we also, and we also have SkyPoint Ventures, which is also in the Ferris wheel building or the Dryden building. And that's kind of, they're doing some investment funding, but also just real estate funding too, on kind of spurring a lot of this activity. And then, just a lot of, and then we've done quite a bit of work with Sebastian, we'll talk about too, about trying to get investors to look at Flint. Because we're always kind of looking at that line, we want to attract investors, but it's like, do we have the pipeline or the deal flow for them to be attracted to this space? So even as a community, we started to meet every quarter. So the Mott Foundation hired a consulting firm to get all of the different groups in entrepreneurship to talk to each other, identify gaps, and then how can we help fill those gaps to help those entrepreneurs moving forward and hopefully establish their companies here, which would then benefit the economic development, right? So creating jobs for this area. So it's been really exciting working with all of these different partners and establishing all of these resources that are available for the Flint community and for the region.
It's really cool, and it's fun to see. And I think it gives hope that it can happen, because we've seen this kind of thing happen in other areas. And you've got the building blocks to be able to put that kind of a thing together. Are you guys seeing uptake there? I mean, people are coming out of the woodwork, presumably, to take advantage of the resources?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit then about XLerateHealth. So XLerateHealth is the longest standing healthcare accelerator in the nation. So it was founded in 2013 in Louisville, Kentucky. And so far to date with Louisville, they have over 90 companies in their portfolio, and collectively they've raised over $200 million. So when we were looking at our ecosystem here in Flint, when we saw the success and the economic development they were creating in Louisville, we said, well, hey, maybe they'll open up a second site here in Flint so that we can look at assets within our health systems here and with the universities on the technology-based side and how can we help get them developed. And so we had one of their cohorts come to Flint, and Ascension Genesis and Hurley and U of M Flint really opened up their arms to those entrepreneurs with customer discovery meetings and interest in potentially doing some piloting studies. And so since that went really, really well, that's when they decided in 2019 to open up the second site here in Flint. And they were looking at some other areas. So it was exciting that, hey, we have these health systems, we have these universities, we have all of this local support. Let's try to open up that second site in the Ferris wheel, because that's also the Ferris wheel was just getting under renovations. So we could have an office with all of the other startups.
That's very
right?
cool. And so this happened in
So-
2019.
Yeah, so this happened in 2019. And what we've noticed is that we're getting quite a bit of interest from the local academics. So like Kettering University and University of Michigan, Flint, they have some technology or innovation occurring. And so we're finding that we're getting our pipeline filled from some of the academics, and we're still building the relationships with some of the health systems because we know that there's innovation happening there. It's just how do we help them develop a process to identify which clinicians have these new ideas and showing them or explaining to them that there is support for them to take their idea to actually make it to the marketplace to improve their patient care. Right, so that's what we're trying to do here. And so let me just show our website. So let me share our website, and then I can go into some of the programs that we're offering. Okay, so here's our website. So again, XLerateHealth. And one thing that we should talk about too is that we have a nationwide access to mentors. So as you know, by kind of establishing in 2013, we have about 8 years of experience in help building up our mentor list. We have access to hundreds of mentors and a wide variety of expertise. So if an entrepreneur has a specific challenge, we can go within our nationwide network to tap into to help solve that particular problem or have them work with that company. So if you want to take a look at all of our mentors, they're all listed here on our website as well. Not all of them are there, but most of them. And then
We
if
see
you
you
have
Diane Bowie up there, so your list is complete.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few from Michigan that are part of this process too. And let me talk first a little bit about our programs. So we are offering 3 different programs throughout the year. So our primary program is our 12-week bootcamp program. So we are accepting applications now. So this is an intensive 12-week program for anyone who has a healthcare idea. Typically, we want to have some sort of a management team in place. It can be one person that you've secured your intellectual property, and then maybe you at least have a minimal viable product. So this year it's running from April 30th through September. And we always do a roadshow as well. So if you're part of our cohort, we do introductions to the health systems we've built relationships with and to some of the universities and some of the regional stakeholders. So it kind of provides an early introduction so that when we get to customer discovery, we can start facilitating some of those meetings as well. And like we said, Diane is one of our coaches for that program. And we also have some investors and some other regional stakeholders who are coaches for us. And we typically have around 6 to 8 coaches that are kind of drilling our teams throughout all those weeks to help them with making sure that they're moving their company in the right direction.
Oh,
and then we have 2 other
quick thing there,
programs that
Mary.
we've partnered
We had a
with
request.
others.
If you can put your PowerPoint full screen there, that'd be great. Perfect. Thank you. Everyone can see it a little bit easier. Perfect.
And then we have these 2 other programs that we partnered with. So we have partnered with the University of Michigan on their fast-paced program. So we wanted to offer opportunities for entrepreneurs in the bioinnovation side, just to validate their idea. You know, is this an idea that has some commercial viability? So Sebastian and I are coaches for the fast-paced program, and then we really market this program to the Flint community in hopes that, you know, we can identify some good opportunities to attend that. And we've been very successful on that. We've always brought 4 or 5 teams to the fast-paced program. And then we've also partnered with the University of Louisville. And the reason we wanted to bring this 10-week program is because it opens it up to anybody. So it's not just healthcare, because we wanted to make sure in the Flint entrepreneurial ecosystem, it's not just healthcare that needed help, right? There's people who have some other ideas to bring along. We wanted to make sure that we were providing support for them as well. So we have which we're actually started the launch it already for the spring session. So we're halfway into this program, but we will also offer it again in the fall. So if you're interested in dates, so we're already recruiting for the boot camp program, which starts on April 30th and it runs for 10 weeks, and we'll end with a demo day on September 23rd. So we invite, Sebastian's done a great job with building a relationship with a number of investors, not only in Michigan, but also on the coasts as well. So we get a pretty good attendance on our demo day. And then we're also accepting applications for the fast-paced program, which starts on April 30th as well. So those are some of our programs that we're offering. And then if I go back to our website, for our boot camp, website kind of shows you what we're looking for in teams. So you have at least one full-time committed founder that will work through the 12-week program. Like I mentioned, you have a minimal viable product. Hopefully you've already secured the intellectual property, that the team is coachable, and that you maybe have had some previous raising of capital, or you have some revenue, but that's not necessary either. You can be pre-revenue to apply as well. And then, like we said, you have an ability for at least one team member to commit throughout the entire program.
And what sorts of things are required of the teams that come to you? How does that work? I suppose it depends on which program, but I'm sure it's something that's on people's minds. Do I have to give up equity? Do I have to pay a fee? Is this sponsored by somebody? How does this work?
Yep, so for our bootcamp program, so this again is the 12-week course. We do take a 2% equity stake, and we have built a really good relationship with investors. We don't have an investment fund, and we don't fund any of the teams, but we do connect them to investors who then could potentially lead to funding in the future. So that's why we keep our equity stake down. And we worked with some faculty members who are interested in potentially just licensing it. So it's not necessarily that they'll start a company, but we are looking more for folks who are interested in starting a company as well. So we're
there has
open,
to be
and
some
we've noticed
entity
that
there.
with Flint, we're working more with, you have to have an LLC or C Corp. You have to have your team in place. Like you said, maybe have some revenue generation and potentially a minimal viable product as well.
Gotcha. I think you got another sign up here. Somebody said, and they're asking for Diane too. So, it makes total sense, but asking for mentorship for boot camp. So we'll pass that on offline. That's really cool. Can you tell us more maybe about the, sorry, Sebastian, were you gonna say something there?
No, not yet.
I thought I heard an extra voice in the background there. I am interested though in what you can tell us about. So this is new in Flint since 2019. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how this has been running with XLerateHealth out of Louisville, and what sorts of things you've seen.
Yep. So the first year we were all in person, and that was great. So on Thursday morning, so we typically hold our bootcamp program on Thursday. So in the morning is when the teams will have about 20 to 25 minutes being challenged, presenting what their homework was through the week, where they are, what they've accomplished, and then with our coaches challenging them or asking them certain questions. And then in the afternoon, we do one-on-one sessions with them, so we can ensure that whatever problem they currently have right now, that we can kind of identify and focus on that problem for them to help them kind of move past that issue. So it's usually on Thursdays. It's an all day. Now, because of obviously last year, because of the virus, we went virtual, which we actually found to be much more beneficial for our program, because then our coaches didn't have to drive all the way to Flint, that they could be anywhere. Same with investors. So if investors wanted to participate, they didn't have to drive into Flint. So we are going to be virtual again this year. I have a feeling we might continue to be virtual because it kind of opens up our scope on doing introductions and network for our bootcamp programs. And so we're finding that to be very, very helpful And the same with our Launch It program. A lot of the coaches are in Louisville, Kentucky, or else they're in other areas of the state of the country. And so it's just easier being virtual for those programs as well. So again, because you're participating in the Flint doesn't mean you're limited just to the Flint ecosystem. We have access to regional players and as well as national expertise as well.
That's very cool. So let's do a little overview of who you're looking for. So if and you have it on the webpage there, they can go and they can take a look at it. But we're talking about startups that have one founder. They have to have an LLC or an S corp or some entity that can participate. And it sounds like a pretty broad range of subject areas.
Yep. So again, it just has to be healthcare. We're seeing a lot of like medical devices or healthcare IT, healthcare delivery. So anything in that space, that's what we're looking for. But again, even if you just have you can just have an idea and we can help you kind of funnel through that idea. Although we kind of try to keep the fast pace and the Launch It programs to funnel out the ideas until making sure that they have actually vetted that idea and there's some commercial viability. And then that's kind of 2 feeder programs into the bootcamp program.
Very cool.
But and last year was really great because we've had some really great health systems as well as the academics. And so we had 6 companies come into our cohort and 3 of them got pilot studies. So we were pretty excited that half of them got a pilot study with one of our partners to help them with the validation piece of their technology. So we were pretty excited about that. Really, that we really built those relationships and they trust the people that we're bringing to them to be able to do these pilot studies as well.
So that's an interesting point you bring up because it's not just mentorship in hey, I've done MedTech business before. It's also the relationships to healthcare systems for, like you just said, pilot studies. I think you mentioned investors. What's the range of relationships you're trying to bring to the table?
So everywhere from academic feedback and expertise in pilot studies to investors, on having the investors explain to them what it is that they're looking for or what they would need to do for them to be ready for them as an opportunity for investment. And then also obviously with health systems, to be able to get some of that early feedback, just from doing customer discovery meetings from them so that if they need to pivot, they can pivot. Because they'll say, yes, this might be the next, yes, this would help us, but we would never buy it because blah, 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 So there are, just getting that feedback so they're not completely, if they're still seeing that, there is no commercial opportunity here, so you need to pivot, or maybe you should actually go into a whole different market segment to, for your entry point. So we've had a lot of pivoting happening. And these are just having even 20-minute conversations on the health system side. So we just ask our clinicians, just a 20-minute conversation. It's not too much of your time, and that the entrepreneur gets so much more feedback or finds it so valuable, even that 20 minutes. And we've even noticed that a number of times those 20 minutes last longer, or that the clinician is so excited about, oh, look, there's this new idea and I'm providing input, that then they'll kind of continue the relationship with the entrepreneur as well.
It's those kind of connections that make.
So it's been really exciting.
Yeah, and because it's sometimes it only takes 5 minutes, but that one little bit of information, it's like, oh no, don't go that way, and boom, your life changes.
Yeah, and we're trying to do more building of relationships with payers as well as with the FDA regulatory process, understanding where in the FDA, how much validation work, what is it, a class 1, a class 2, what work do they need to get done, and then for payers, what do you need to do to get a code, or is there something already in existence that already has a code? And just kind of start you in those thinking processes as well.
Yeah, very, very
So again,
cool.
Payers, health systems, investors, academics, that whole gamut of the network that we're trying to establish and create, here in Flint.
Tell us about some dates here, because I know you've got some dates coming up for bootcamp applications and other programs. Can you give us a little breakdown of that again?
Yeah, sure. So for our bootcamp program, for applications, again, you can go to our website to apply. Make sure that if you're interested in the Flint location, that you select the Flint location. And those are due for April 30th. But we do start the bootcamp program on July 15th. However, on July 14th is when we do our roadshow. So we do a lot of introductions. So it's a whole day on the 14th as well. And then we have our demo day on September 23rd. And then for the fast-paced program, we're accepting applications now. And that program starts on April 30th. And again, that's also virtual. And then that ends on Friday, June 4th. So for the fast-paced program, that runs on Friday afternoons.
Very cool.
With the University of Michigan.
And I'm imagining this in that sense, you're acting as a facilitator for fast pace and a participant. So the equity deal that you talked about would be more for the boot camp aspect than for the fast pace, because that's a U of M administered program.
Yep. Exactly. So thank you for that clarification. The fast pace program is free and it's helped supported by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. So, but University of Michigan Fast Forward Innovation Team, Medical Innovation Group actually manages that process. And then Sebastian and I kind of market it to our regional players here, primarily our health systems and our universities here. And then we'll be one-on-one, we'll be the coaches for the Flint teams through that program.
Very good. We have a question here. Is there any geographic requirement for company participants in your programs? Do they have to come from a specific part of the country or the world?
They do not. I mean, we're funded by the Mott Foundation and 100K Ideas. So of course they want us to try to bring in as many Flint companies as we can, but it's open to everybody in Michigan and also to the nation. And we even have some international teams that have applied and have been accepted to the program as well.
That's
so
great.
By no means are we limited on where you are located.
It really is interesting how in this time of COVID, there's certainly some drawbacks to not being together in person, but then there's also times when it's like, wow, that we just broke those barriers down and there is better participation from a distance. That's really exciting.
Yeah,
let's see what.
I think it's been phenomenal.
What else should we know about the program? This is great. So we've got Accelerate Bootcamp applications due April 30th. Bootcamp is July through September. There's a 2% equity for that, but that's MedTech companies anywhere in the world, as long as they have a little bit of structure and a little bit of commitment there. Somebody's full-time committed.
And healthcare IT and healthcare delivery as well.
Great. And then access to the fast-paced program through you guys as well. What else should we be knowing about either the city of Flint or XLerateHealth?
We're just here to help you. We're excited to work with all these entrepreneurs and help them get up and off their feet and help them do some introductions into our national network to help them move forward and hopefully get them primed and ready to pitch to investors to get some more funding if that's the route they want to go.
Wonderful.
Let me jump here, Gene.
Yes, Sebastian.
Because the bootcamp takes 12 weeks, but we never let go the companies. We keep working with them after the bootcamp. Once they join the portfolio, they become part of the family, let's say. And they can, we've been meeting with companies on a weekly or monthly basis that came to us many years ago. So.
Yeah, and so far in our portfolio, we have 12 companies that are in the Flint portfolio, and collectively they've already raised over $2 million, or over, I think they're almost at $3 million. So in our first 2 years, so that's pretty exciting as well. And a lot of that, Sebastian, and I don't know if Sebastian, you want to talk about the relationships you've built with the investors or not?
Yeah, I can mention a few ideas there, because altogether the XLerateHealth portfolio counts with 90 companies, and Mary has mentioned 12 belongs to the Michigan site. But all these together raised over $200 million. And I believe that's because we work on companies' alignment to market with analysis on the funding space. We also review the funded competitors, and we also understand what are the differentiators. And based on that, over the 12-week programs and even after that, we prepare the proper data rooms with the companies and with the founders to make sure that they can achieve the goals at the proper time. So that's one part, I believe it's very important, because many times researchers are not very used to this type of documentations and languages and all the spreadsheets, cap tables that involves. So we are here to help, and we count with a tremendous team that has a long background in the VC world. But the other piece, besides the share of the knowledge that our team have, is it's reaching out to angel investors and to venture capital investors. And how do we give exposition and momentum to our companies? And for that, we maintain a relationship with numerous of venture capital firms in Michigan and even outside of Michigan. We understood how important is a relation to the coastal VCs. So we've been working in that network for a couple of years now. And we believe that's a way to give exposure to them.
That's great. And so I think one of the points you're bringing up here is this ongoing, it's not just, don't think of this as a 12-week program, it's a ongoing relationship with access to these connections that continue to grow. We had a question here as to what the website was, and I'm just going to do a quick screen share again. This is XLerateHealth.com. This is the website we were looking at just a second ago. XLerateHealth.com, XLerate. It took me a few tries to figure out how to spell that one, but it is XLerate health.com, and the accelerator page of that for those who were asking that question. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate Mary and Sebastian, you're coming on the show today and telling us about this. We continue to hope to hear wonderful things about the city of Flint and Accelerate Health, and we thank you for all that you're doing for the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
All the best. Enjoy your weekend when you get there. Very cool to get around the state and hear what's going on in a lot of places. You know, it wasn't that many years ago that we, those of us who grew up in the States, wow, we didn't think much of Detroit in terms of what was going on there. And it has turned into a complete renaissance, and really cool things. Of course, our friends over at Tech Town often with us. And now cool things happening in Flint. So just really exciting to hear about that. Next up, have you been thinking about emergency use authorizations? We want to tell you what is going on with those. We're going to bring up the slideshow here, and then we will get going on that. So are you still thinking of an emergency use authorization? It's been a whole year since this whole thing started. FDA burned the midnight oil. We had FDA asking folks, do you mind if we email you on the weekend or call you on the weekend? And everyone laughed because FDA never asks that. Things have certainly slowed down since then. And you may be wondering what's going on with the emergency use authorizations. Should I still be considering one? So let's back up. What is an EUA? How long are the EUAs good for? And what should my strategy be? That's what we're going to talk about today. So what is an EUA? First of all, it's an emergency use authorization. It's a clearance to use a device that's not otherwise cleared or approved for distribution in the United States. And there's at least two scenarios that this can happen under. One is a company-specific authorization. In other words, your company has to submit to the FDA saying, we think we should be able to market this even though it's not formally cleared. Examples of that might be things like blood purification systems and mask decontamination systems. There's no general, hey, if you do this, you're cleared. But for certain things like surgical masks, there are blanket authorizations. As long as you comply, you've already got your letter. You just have to make sure you're complying with the requirements of it. And so there's two ways that you can approach that. Now, unfortunately, there have been many companies that have reached out to FDA and said, oh, we want to try to get cleared this really interesting thing, but it didn't really fall into any of these categories very cleanly, and that usually results in a bit of a dead end. But let's take a look at what kinds of things have received emergency use authorizations. Vaccines we're all familiar with. Drug and biological therapeutic products, and then a whole long list of devices, including things like blood purification devices, continuous renal replacement therapy and hemodialysis devices, in vitro diagnostics, personal protective equipment decontamination systems. You remember that the Battelle decontamination system was one of the first EUAs that was ever out there. Infusion pumps, personal protective equipment itself, patient monitoring devices, respiratory assist devices, ventilators and accessories, and then other devices that don't fit into the above. So there's quite a few things that have gotten emergency use authorization from the FDA. Well, EUAs generally follow the keep it simple principle. And if you look inside of, for example, the surgical mask emergency use authorization letter, it notes that among other things, surgical masks that include drugs, biologics, nanoparticles, or antimicrobial or antiviral agents are not in scope for the mask emergency use authorization. So for the number of people that we had come saying, oh, I want to include this in the mask, or I want to include that in the mask because I can do this or that to COVID, that is not something in scope and never has been to the emergency use authorizations. So keep it simple. The emergency use authorizations are looking generally for basic functionality to step in and fill the gap. If you look at every single emergency use authorization, you'll find a section just like this. This one applying to masks, but it applies to diagnostics, to vaccines, to everything. You'll find a section that says, this is during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's important. You'll find something that says, because it's life-threatening. That's section 1. Then you'll find something that compares the benefits and the risks. And longtime listeners to MedTech Crossroads will know that benefit risk is one of FDA's primary directives and primary ways to think about what's in front of them. If the benefit is high, well, we can accept a little more risk. And that is the weighing that's happening in number 2. In number 3, and this is an important one, no adequate or approved alternative is available. That's the one that's going to be changing as we go forward through time most dramatically. So how long are EUAs good for? Well, here's the short answer. Until they aren't needed anymore. Okay, but who's to say when that is? That's a very ambiguous statement. Let's review it again. The public health emergency is over. That's when they would not be needed anymore. The benefits of authorization no longer outweigh the risks. Okay, but that's a little amorphous. Cleared or approved alternatives start to exist for the specific thing that is being sought an emergency use authorization for. Let's look at that a little more carefully. Approved alternatives. We just got this news very recently. A couple days ago, FDA permits marketing of first SARS-CoV-2 diagnostic test using a traditional pre-market review process. So the BioFire respiratory panel received de novo clearance from the agency. They were granted a de novo. This means that 510Ks will now be accessible using them as a predicate. So this has opened up a whole new pathway with BioFire leading the way. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that suddenly no diagnostic EUAs are permissible anymore? Are they all just going to instantly go away? Well, it's not quite that simple. Remember these? Remember Zika and Ebola and H7N9 and even things like anthrax? Well, the anthrax EUAs have recently dropped off, but for Zika, Ebola, H7N9, and a slew of others that you might not remember, they still have active emergency use authorizations years after the original need arose. That's interesting. Well, Ebola today. Let's talk about Ebola today. If you wanted to market a new Ebola diagnostic, you'd do a 510K comparing your test probably to the OraQuick Ebola rapid antigen test, which was cleared through a de novo. So very much like what we just looked at a minute ago, going forward, you're going to see more and more folks clear through traditional pathways. But to this day, the FDA has not shut down the emergency use authorizations for existing Ebola tests. They're still out there. Some have received updates, but they haven't made them go through the clearance process, and they also haven't shut them down. So there is a little bit of grandfathering going on with things like Ebola and Zika and H7N9. But does that mean that you're going to go out today and ask for an emergency use authorization for Ebola? No. So we can even see with COVID that that window is perhaps a little bit starting to close, at least in the diagnostics space. So what should the strategy be? Well, at this point, here's one way to think about it. An emergency use authorization may best be thought of as a stepping stone to a traditional clearance or approval that you will pursue regardless. If you're ready to put the time and effort in to get a traditional clearance, then you may still have some really good news from an emergency use authorization, because it may get you early to market in a way that the traditional clearance won't get you. So you may get a little bit of a boost from the EUA, but viewing an EUA as a way to get to market with no intention of pursuing a traditional clearance, that's probably where we want to stop thinking about the EUAs as a viable option. And as always, if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to Into Being. We would love to chat with you about how to get your device cleared to the market. And there's lots of options and lots of paths. So we'd love to talk to you about that. Next up, before we hit the pitch party, I want to let you know that the Into Being team is seeking an embedded systems developer. Primary role would be microcontroller firmware and user interface software development and system design. Somebody who wants to get into electromechanical systems and also touch on regulatory topics. We would love to talk to that person if you know who they are. So please let your network know. Next up, it is the third and final pitch of our 2021 March edition of the Pitch Party. As I'll remind you one more time, the Walt Young rule. This is an interesting discussion about pitches. We can't pick winners and losers because pitching and running a business are not the same thing. But we can talk about interesting ideas, interesting concepts, interesting market needs. And as always, one more time, Fred Smith from FedEx, whose college professor told him, I just love this. I've said this every single time. The concept is interesting and well-formed, but in order to earn better than a C, the idea must be feasible. So anytime we think about pitches, we want to think about Mr. Fred Smith, who made a great success of himself, despite his college professor telling him that his idea was not feasible. So we take all of this with a grain of salt and with a little humility. And with that, I want to welcome to the show Anthony Esplin, who is going to tell us about a really novel oxygen pillow. And Anthony, we're going to give you 10 minutes on the clock and then have you take it away to tell us all about yourself and the concept. Are you ready with your presentation?
Yeah, let me just put a timer here myself so I also keep track of the time. I can be long-winded at times, so that's good.
We will look forward to it. Why don't you go ahead and bring that up, and then we're going to give you 10 minutes on the clock and let you get going.
All righty. You guys see that?
I think it's about to come up. We have it. Just go full screen on that. Perfect. We'll let you take it away, Anthony. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, so I'm with a small startup called Sleep Easy Technology, where we make sleeping convenient for people with chronic oxygen needs. This whole project started with this little boy right here. His name is Carter. And the thing about Carter is he has hypoxia as well as Down syndrome. And when I was living in Utah, he was my neighbor. And the thing about Carter is he refused to wear a nasal cannula. So that's that tube that goes in your nose and around your ears. And you can imagine any little boy, let alone a boy with Down syndrome, is going to want to wear this tube throughout the night. And that's where our solution, trying to help people that are non-compliant with wearing their oxygen needs. This problem of people that don't want to wear or refuse to wear aren't treated. And Carter is not the only person that has this issue. If you look at the whole industry, when it comes to nursing care, the way they treat these patients is they put that nasal cannula on that patient, and then they come back every 15 minutes to check on that one individual. And so, Carter's not the only one that has this issue of not wanting to wear a nasal cannula, and not wearing that nasal cannula leads to being, just not getting his oxygen, right? And because he's not getting his oxygen as needed, he's getting, there's effects of hypertension, stroke, depression that compound over the years of not getting your treatment. And so there's many other patient populations that suffer from this. You have Alzheimer's, dementia, acute bronchitis, I'll just move myself here, and COPD that would use a solution that helps them receive their oxygen without compromising their ability to sleep normally like everybody else. And so our solution, if this little video that we made a flow simulation, it's very basic, but we built him a pillow that allows him to house his oxygen in the pillow. So Carter gets his great night's sleep. He doesn't wake up in the middle of the night to wake up his parents, and he's rested well the next day, and he's no longer throwing tantrums and being grumpy like all of us, I can imagine. So here's a rendering of our MVP that we've built, just with some humidifier just pumping into the pillow, where it has these mesh portions that allows the oxygen to come directly into the patient's face. And I guess one thing I forgot to mention is we are patent pending. So we are moving the ball forward with our non-provisional patent. In terms of what's this market size, we have done some market sensitivity in terms of price as to what a nursing care facility would pay, depending on what type of patient they are. They said they'd be willing to pay between $150 and $200 per patient every 6 months to receive this type of service of having a pill that delivers oxygen to patients that are non-compliant. If we were just to look at what is all of these patient populations selling them one pillow, we're looking at a total addressable market of about $10 billion. And we are going to focus on just, the COPD, the people that have to have it every night, which brings our size of obtainable market to, $370 million. So, so we made a pillow that's got some, some essentially some plumbing that gets him his oxygen. Like, what does that mean? How do I even know if that works? Like, sure, Carter, they say he feels better, but we put an O2 monitor on him, and this top line right here, this is him using the pillow with oxygen, and this bottom one is him using it without oxygen. And so because Carter refuses to wear the nasal cannula at all, it's not like he has an alternative. But with this data, we can see that his baseline was raised 4%, but the real kicker is these drops per hour. So with your sleep, you have what's called the oxygen desaturation index. So that's like the number of times your oxygen level is like dropping throughout the night. And so without oxygen, Carter has about 4 drops per hour. When he uses our pillow, it goes from 4 to 0. So not only is he qualitatively, but he's quantitatively getting, a better night's sleep according to his oxygen stats, as well as the number of times his blood oxygen saturation levels are dropping. So currently what we're up to and what we're doing on our end to validate, like, hey, is this a market? Is this something that people want, that they use? Is we're currently recruiting people just to do like a usability test that want to try it out. So we have a handful right now, and we're going to be working up to 30 people. Excuse me. So we've been working with a lot of the local people here. So I'm currently at Notre Dame as a graduate student in the STEAM program, and so we've got connections with Beacon Medical, as well as a bunch of other local Alzheimer dementia units that we're working with to see who would be a good fit to try this pillow out, to collect some more data and to show that, hey, this is a market. Aside from our usability testing, we've also done panels using usertesting.com, where of the people we've asked if they would switch from using a nasal cannula to our pillow if it was an option, we've had about an 80% what do you call that? Conversion, not a conversion, but 80% of the people that took our survey or we interviewed and talked with said that they would switch from using a nasal cannula to an oxygen pillow if it was offered. So what we're looking at is essentially a double-sided market where we're going to be doing direct to consumer type stuff, more online sales, and offering free trials, and then retargeting that person as that pillow becomes used, and then offering discounts for referrals to other people. And then we also have, the same or a similar tactic for the B2B side, where we'll be doing direct sales to the medical facilities as well as medical professionals. In terms of milestones, we're coming up here soon. We're going to be raising about 200K in order to bring this product to market and bring it to life. A lot of that comes down to setting up our QMS system. Currently, the way that we have it is we're going to register with the FDA and not make any claims that this pillow does anything, just to essentially update them as we collect data to show how well it works, especially for those patients that there is no other option, and then come back with more of an efficacy study and show that it works in such and such a way and with a specific indication for different patient populations. So the next steps that we have in addition to that is creating our next gen version of the pillow, which will be incorporating some tech with the pillow to track where the patient sleeps on the pillow to get them their oxygen while they're sleeping. So if someone rolls, it'll track that person and light up different areas of the pillow in order to get them oxygen. So we have some other things. This is definitely our low fidelity prototype MVP. That's we developed in-house. So it's got a ways to go before we launch. In terms of our team, we've got me as CEO. We have, and my background is biomedical engineering. I actually got my degree from the University of Utah, and then came here to to Notre Dame for the STEAM program. And then we have Grace, who she is a nursing student. And then we have Milagros, who has a background in industrial design. And our CFO is Joseph Kennedy, who is a current MBA student. In terms of our advisory board, we have Chris Salvino, which is a trauma surgeon that owns a company that commercializes Class 1 and Class 2 products. And he does, products that are specifically around like oxygen needs. Another advisor that we're adding is Phil Newbold, which he was a previous CEO of Beacon Medical, has been really directing us in different ways and people to contact to see what the best go-to-market strategy would be. And then we also have Matthew Corner, who is more of a branding type guy that helps scaling with innovation. In terms of like competitive products, the main competitor, as you can see right here, is the nasal cannula. And our x-axis is, the level of comfort, how comfortable is this? And then our y is, efficiency, so less effective down here and more effective at the top. So from the data that we've gathered, in terms of that percentage of people that want to use our product, most of them have either identified with the product saying, hey, this is just who I've become and there's no other alternative. And so they just don't know there's another option. And so our pillow really comes in and being slightly less effective because you have to run your liters a little bit higher, but it's more comfortable. And then you also have the non-compliant. One of the cool quotes that we got, hot off the press this last week is we met with Alico Medical, a local DME, that said that, hey, if this works, like we've got 6,000 patients that are ready to buy it now. And so, we're starting to see there's just this market traction that people want to use the product. And so that's been really great on our end, and really validating that, hey, we're onto something. And if you would like to get in contact, that's my email there, as well as my co-founder, Milagros.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. We appreciate your being here today. I want one question for you, though, which is the question I always ask everybody afterwards, is tell us a little bit more about the passion of why you're doing this.
Yeah, no. So my neighbor, I'm an interesting student just because I'm a parent myself, and so I understand that need of like getting sleep and like what happens to you if your child's not sleeping through the night. And so this whole project stemmed from me seeing a neighbor that had this issue that I was like, oh man, I know what that's like. I'm going to go out there and help them. And so that's really what, pushed me in even developing or coming up with this product in the beginning. And so it's been fun to see, the other people's lives that you can really help addressing a need when you know how it feels.
That's wonderful. Well, we appreciate what you're doing, and we thank you for being here today. Tune in. It's next week for the judging of these last three presentations, and we wish each one of you the best. So thanks for being with us today, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks, Gene, for inviting me.
We are going to go to a little bit of Q&A, and of course, next week, all show, we're going to do the judging with our panel of community judges. We do have a few hands raised. Actually, our panelist just a minute ago, Mary Augie. Mary, you can bring your video and audio back on if you had a question or comment to pop back in with.
I did, Anthony. Thanks. That was a great presentation. I do have a question because I know you said you're going to go direct to consumers. Are you directly mainly going towards children or all ages? And then also, does the way you sleep, whether it's on your back or on your side, does that make a difference to your oxygen intake?
Yeah, so we're not necessarily targeting children in our marketing. We are definitely targeting more adults, people that sleep with those oxygen tubes. People that sleep, on their side or on their stomach definitely receive better oxygen with our product than someone that sleeps on their back, which is a unique stance because with a nasal cannula, it's most comfortable and you receive best oxygen when you're on your back. So in that way, we definitely differentiate on the targeted people that would use our product.
Great. Thanks for the question. And if you need an accelerator, I can recommend a great one up in Flint. So get you guys put in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you both for being here. I'm going to go next to our friend Ken Spencer, who actually had his hand up during the EUA presentation. And let's see if Ken is there to ask us a question or tell us something interesting.
Yeah, so thanks, Gene. So actually I have two comments, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So I really am so happy to see Accelerate up there in Flint. And I wanted to put a plug in for that fast-paced FFMI project because I was actually in the very second cohort of ICOR way back when, okay? And it was the time demands and the inflexibility of the schedule there made it impossible for healthcare teams, especially those that were led by clinicians, to participate. So the fast-paced FFMI program doesn't require the same amount of time and has been a boon for clinicians to participate in. So thank you guys very much at Michigan and Accelerate to offer that program.
That's great. Yeah, you pretty much had to quit your job and go start a company if you wanted to do ICOR,
Yeah.
which is a great program. No knock to ICOR.
Right, but it was crazy in terms of the time consumption there. I can tell you from going through it, right? So there's another question on the EUAs. So I wanted to clarify that if you've got an EUA and you've been shipping product under that EUA, but the FDA suddenly decides the pandemic is over, okay, that in fact, you may not be able to further ship, but all the inventory that's out there can be used. Is that correct?
That's a great question. I cannot give you an absolutely definitive answer, except that usually what FDA is regulating is marketing and distribution. So again, not legal advice, but one would assume that if you've got it in stock and you're using it, that'd probably be okay. It's going to be the distribution of new. So I'd worry more about the stock that hasn't been sold yet than the stock that had been sold. But again, not legal advice. It's a great question. I think if you have any concern about volumes, you really want to be in a position where you're pursuing new clearances with some disposition of prior EUA product.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. We appreciate it. We're at the top of the hour. We'll give another 30 seconds if anyone has any comments. We did hear today, though, that the hot commodity is Diane Bowie as a mentor. So if you want to get her as a mentor for XLerateHealth, you better get in there fast because we heard her name come about like 2 or 3 times today. So that's what we got for today on MedTech Crossroads. Just a little preview. We are looking forward to the judging next week. for our last 3 pitch party contestants. And after that, actually really fun, on April 2nd, Jen Baird from Fifth Eye is going to be coming back on the show to tell us all about their de novo, their successful de novo. That is going to be really fun to unpack with her, and we'll be getting into that. So pitch party, week after that, Jen Baird, and after that, we are well into April. Looking forward to doing that with you. Hope you have a great week. Talk to you next Friday. Bye-bye.